Everything is lining up perfect for the Denver Broncos to become only the fourth team in NFL history to go from being a 1-5 laughingstock to making the NFL playoffs. There is great news that has come down just the past couple days in the NFL. Can't wait to share that with you. Can't wait to show how I think that sets us up to make the NFL playoffs, which is absolutely absurd. If you remember early on in this Denver Broncos season, you had so many pundits and smart people come out and say, is Sean Payton going to go back to Fox? Is he going to quit coaching in the NFL? Does he know what he got into? There were articles written about that, definitely tons of articles about how we were going to move on from Vance Joseph even mid-year, and people were saying that they were using our poor performance as kind of building on the narrative that we're a bad team, rather than looking at it as we are a new team hitting a stumbling block. And if you really look at it, the Broncos had some crazy fluky losses early on in the year, and we're just not hitting those anymore. Lutz has his only struggles kicking field goals in our first game with Sean Payton. We know we no longer have tons of padded practices. We don't really have a great preseason. And in his first game against division rivals, who we haven't beaten so long, we lost by a point, but really we kicked ourselves in the foot by missing a ton of field goals. We then blow one of Russ's best game as a Denver Bronco. I remember thinking Russ is totally back to Seattle Russ at the start of this Washington Commanders game. We blow a huge lead that we never should have, and we lost. We then partied a little too hard in South Beach and lose a horrible game to the Miami Dolphins. And it seems like this is when the articles start getting written that things are over. It was at halftime of the Bears game that we were down 28-7, and everyone was saying Sean Payton is tanking for Williams is the best case scenario, and the worst case scenario is the game has just passed him by and he's trying and he doesn't have his fastball anymore. Well, look at how those tables turn. We then come back from that 28-7 loss. We don't give up on the road. We dig deep and we beat the Bears, who are a better team now than a lot of people thought. And we run up against a buzzsaw and just such a weird thing against the Jets, where the entire NFL had kind of been stoking this fire that Sean Payton was talking smack about Nathaniel Hackett. And you see all of the Jets have a real chip on their shoulder and come out and give it their best effort, and they beat us. And at that point, we are 1-4, and it's like, this thing is over. We have a built-in schedule loss where we then go on a Thursday night to the Chiefs. And this is where the hope for me really began, was we played and really started to show that we had the blueprint to stop Pat Mahomes. And while he didn't have a full-on Patty meltdown like he did against the Bills, we showed the blueprint for how you stop this team. And he got in the end zone one time. There were some questionable things that happened in that game, but the fact that we barely lost on the road on a Thursday night in Arrowhead was where my hope really started for this team. And we came out, and when the Packers' backs were against the wall, we beat the Packers, we then beat the Chiefs, and we rattle off 5 straight to go into Houston and play a very hot quarterback, and to lose the turnover battle 3-0, to have a punt blocked, and despite all of those errors, we have the ball on the 8-yard line with 4 downs, and it didn't work. But the fact is, those were our losses. They were all fluky losses. And then you look at the strength of our wins, and they couldn't be stronger. We demolished a Chargers team whose back was against the wall. They had to win that game, and we beat them, and it wasn't even close. And now our future is in front of us, and it looks incredible. So this is where the good news for today starts. So the big pieces of good news from today, if we're looking at it, and we never want to celebrate at someone else's misfortune, but it looks like the Houston Texans will be without several key players. We want the Houston Texans to drop another game because we do not own the tiebreaker with them. So while we're knotted up there, they win the tiebreaker over us. So they will be without C.J. Stroud most likely this week, which is a great thing for the Broncos because we need them to lose one more game than us. Other big pieces of great news is that Justin Herbert is done for the season. We ended his season just like we ended the offensive coordinator for the Bills this season, and we ended his season on a loss. And the reason that this is great is twofold. The first reason, obviously, is we have to play them again in 2 games from now, 3 games, I guess, technically. And it's really nice to know that the Denver Broncos won't be playing against one of the superstars in the NFL. My other kind of secret hope is I think Brandon Staley is an absolute train wreck of a coach, and it would actually hurt the Broncos if they fire their coach and get a good coach. Like, thinking about Harbaugh coaching the Chargers scares me. To think about Harbaugh and Herbert, you got Mahomes and Andy Reid, like that all of a sudden is a terrifying division again, whereas I never am worried about the Chargers with Staley. So my hope is that with Herbert being out, that the owner gives Staley one more run and just says, well, yeah, he didn't have his quarterback at the end. They could have made a playoff push, but Herbert got hurt. So you just kind of hope that he fills himself with some of that hopium to not get rid of the head coach. That's probably a long shot, but we'll see how this season plays out. We'll definitely keep you informed. But the fact of the matter is, look at the Broncos' remaining schedule and tell me it doesn't just give you like goosebumps. If I was a betting man, I would have all of my money on the Broncos to make the playoffs and maybe even win the division, you guys. I'm not saying this for clicks. This is how I really feel. If you look at our next 4 games, 3 of them have losing records. 3 of them have backup quarterbacks, and the other one is Jared Goff. You cannot tell me when you look at next week, Jared Goff and the Lions, the week after we got Bailey Zappi and the Patriots at home. Then we have this Easton Stick guy again at home against the Chargers. It's going to be a madhouse. And then we end our season in Las Vegas against backup quarterback Aiden O'Connell. You can't tell me looking at those that you would want any of those guys over Russell Wilson. You can't. So not only would you rather have our coach over all the remaining coaches, you'd take our quarterback. Which of these defenses over the past 6 weeks has been better than ours? None of them. So we have a better quarterback. We have a better defense. I would say other than maybe the Raiders running back, we have the best running back out of all remaining running backs. I would take Cortland Sutton over any receiver that we have left other than maybe Keenan Allen and the Chargers. And then like I said, you'd take our defense over all of them. So I just see we match up so well against all these remaining teams, and it is an absolute joy and excitement to think about what the future could hold. We know all we need to do is win 3 of the next 4, but if we win all 4, depending on which ones the Chiefs lose, we could make the NFL playoffs as the AFC West champions. And I just want to pinch myself saying that because it is absolutely amazing. So that is what Sean Payton has said in press conferences, that he truly isn't just gunning for a playoff spot. He is gunning for an AFC West championship. And I think depending on how things go in the AFC West with the Chiefs, that is actually more realistic than a lot of people think. Last piece of fantastic news is that we got an update that Quinn Meinerz is back in Colorado. You might remember at the start of the third quarter, he was hospitalized with irregular heartbeat. This could just completely be a coincidence, but I noticed for the first time on Sunday that the Gatorade behind the players, like behind the players bench, was actually the new Fast Twitch Gatorade, which not a sponsor of the show, but delicious pre-workout Gatorade. But that has one serving of that has about 200 milligrams of caffeine. So did Quinn Meinerz like pound a bunch of that thinking it was normal Gatorade and had heart palpitations from a little bit of caffeine toxicity? I'm not a doctor. My brother is. And that's completely speculation, so don't aggregate this. But could that have been it? Irregardless, he is back in Denver, expected to play. He's been one of the best offensive linemen we've had in Denver for a long time. He's Pro Football Focus's #1 lineman in the entire AFC. So missing him would have been pretty bad. And then the last piece of good news is that we have Kareem Jackson coming back for suspension, not this week, but the week after. And we just have a ton of depth there. The only person who we still don't have an update on is Nick Benito. I think we're going to break down a lot about this Lions game coming up and what it's going to take to win. We are certainly going to need some depth at that pass rusher position. As much as I don't think Jared Goff is the answer, he gets the ball out incredibly quickly, and so we need to get to him fast, which means having a lot of guys that you can throw at him. So looking ahead of this, I just said CJ Stroud, obviously not going to play in this next game. Houston Texans this week have the Titans. We just saw the Titans last night beat the Miami Dolphins. That's another piece of great news, is that we want Miami to want to play for all of their games because Miami ends the year against Buffalo. And if something were to happen and Buffalo wins out up until that point and we are to lose one of our last four, if Buffalo jumps ahead of us, obviously they could knock us out of the playoffs. So one of my fears was all of a sudden Buffalo plays that last game of the year against Miami and they're not playing for anything, and so they sit all their guys. But I think that's great news that Miami lost because they need to keep winning to keep their lead, and I think they still want that top spot in the AFC as well. Obviously, we talked about the fact that you got Gardner Minshew, Mitch Trubisky, Joe Flacco, all the quarterbacks in front of us. I love that we have one of the best quarterbacks still alive in this playoff hunt. And you wouldn't have said that a bunch of years ago, but now you do because the Denver Broncos are going to make the playoffs. I hope you're there for the ride, Broncos country. Let's ride.